for attending. It's fun to relive some of these memories and experiences by sharing them with you. As Steve said, I'm actually originally from El Salvador, and between the period of 2011 and 2014, I got to travel a lot in El Salvador and Guatemala and Mexico, and went out to photograph every chance that I got. So, you know, some of the pictures are taken through the office window. Some of them are national parks, and some of them may have been at a farm. So it was different places all the time. You'll see as we go through the pictures, my style of photography. I like more of the environmental type of images, natural behaviors, and you know, the birds just ignoring me and doing, you know, what they're supposed to be doing. So without further ado, let me start sharing my screen and get started. Can everybody see okay?
Yeah.
Looks great.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to show you the area where the Maya Empire, if you call it, used to be. And the region that explore more was actually in the mountains of Guatemala. It's called the Sierra de los Chuchumates. If you spend any time there or you know anything about the Mayas, is one of the things that is interesting about their language is that they have the CH, the ch sound in a lot of words, and actually the animals, the birds, a lot of the, when I can remember the name, the Mayan name for it, I'll say it. But a lot of the birds have that ch sound. So as you can see in the map, there's the unfortunately the topography is not labeled, but in the southern part, in the bottom, you have the Sierra, the Central Sierra of Chiapas, and below that is the Chiapas Sierra Madre that goes into Guatemala. So all that is highlands. Plus, in El Salvador side, you have on the northern part of the country, you have a chain of volcanoes, and the habitat can be very varied because you have old volcanoes with cloud forest on them, and right next to it will be a younger volcano that is just bare lava fields, but still, you know, birds take advantage of those areas because of the different types of plants that grow there. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. You can go in and out of one habitat in just a few hundred feet.
I guess I'm gonna have to go to Target tomorrow.
This is probably one of the most colorful birds that you'll see in that area. And this, the Oscillated Turkey, it's endemic to the Yucatan Peninsula. Interestingly, it does not, it was actually displaying to females that were around. But the display is different to our turkeys. It's, it doesn't gobble. Instead, it stretches its neck and then contracts it really fast. And I don't know how to describe the sound, but it's almost like a big hiccup. And I guess that's what female turkeys find attractive. And he was going around doing that and chasing other males around and posing once in a while. And you know, it was nice that, so this is in Tikal, by the way. It's you know, it's nice and easy for a change to have plenty of light and open spaces. Because as you see later in some of the other photos, it's difficult to, they're difficult to photograph. You know, the light is just wrong. The birds are up high in the trees. And like I said, a lot of these were done, you know, they're not in lodges where they're not coming to feeders. They're just going about doing what they like to do. This is also another one. Oh, and sorry, something I forgot to say is that, so we'll be moving from the lowlands to the highlands. So all these can be found at low elevation or near the coast, in tropical rainforest, or scrub forest also. This is a common bird, but yet, you know, very interesting. Rufus Snape Wren. They live in small family groups. They're very loud. And this one is collecting cotton from a cotton plant. This is at a family friend's farm, and they don't grow cotton commercially. It just the plant just happened to be there, and they make these big messy nests, and they actually probably one of the few birds that make a sleeping nest. So you don't know if it's actually they're raising babies or it's just for the night. But they definitely like, you know, the more comfortable mattresses instead of just a bunch of twigs. This is scrub euphonia, and they're mostly seed eaters. So I don't know what it was doing up in this tree, and those are climbing cactus. You do find a lot of that in the rainforest and cloud. Yeah. You do find them in the cloud forest also. So they, I don't know, they're probably similar to other cacti that, you know, flower at night, and then the bats eat the food, the fruit, I mean, and the birds, and the seeds eventually get deposited on the branches of trees, and but they're not parasitic. That's blue-gray tanager, pretty common also, and it's feeding on figs, wild figs. That's a grayish saltator, also another common bird, but not so easy to photograph. They always seem to have this angry look to them, and this is at my friend's farm, and they usually came around when they watered some of the crops, and they waited at the edge of the forest or the edge of the bushes to come and bathe or drink. And so when I figured that out, I would be waiting for them before they turned the water on. And this guy didn't seem very happy that I was getting in the way. And this is the other saltator, is the black-headed saltator, less common than the grayish saltator. Those are, they're not native to Central America. I believe they are ornamental. It's an ornamental banana tree. And I think it's from India. But, you know, it's obviously the birds eat it, spread the seeds, and you can find it growing in a lot of places now. And this is a cinnamon hummingbird. This is in a park in El Salvador as well. It is an ecological park. It used to be an old coffee plantation that was donated by the family who owned it. for reforestation. They have left the coffee plants there, so they're just going to let them live out their lives and let nature take its course. But again, the open areas where there's flowering plants are really great for hummingbirds. And another common bird is the social flycatcher. And what's interesting about this picture is that it was eating seeds somewhere and coming back and then regurgitating the seeds. And this is also at that eco park. Regurgitating the seeds, but they were sticky, and you would see it rub its beak against the side of the branch. And a few days later, when I went back, I noticed that the seeds had germinated, stuck to the branch. I didn't get a chance to see. I've asked people if they know what it is, what it's going to turn into. I was really curious to find out. If it's some kind of parasitic plant or it was just temporary and they were going to drop, but it was just an interesting little behavior of the bird helping that plant get started. But this is in Guatemala. That's a bare-throated tiger heron. Pretty tame, actually. It let me get really close. I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to visit Tikal, but that's also a fantastic place for photography, especially. There's a lot more open areas, and the birds are definitely used to a lot of tourists, and this one did not mind at all being approached. Actually, my guide was worried about me getting too close to the water, and I think they're more or less crocodiles that live there. A similar one, but different, excuse me, but different bird. This is the pinnated bittern. It kind of replaces our northern bittern in Central and South America. There's only one place where I saw it regularly, and that's Laguna Jocotal. It's a small lagoon, but very, very, very rich in bird life. So I always enjoyed finding this one there. And there it is, taking off. And the same place, green heron. That's a streaked back oriole, and obviously building its nest. And it's kind of neat to be able to see what it looks like on the inside. And, I mean, it's so amazing to me, though, that only with the beak, they're able to weave all that grass and make it so strong and so well done. They're feeding on the nectar, but unfortunately for the tree, they take the whole flower off. And that's one of our migrants. This is in that same park that was close to where I was living in San Salvador. This summer tanager will come at the end of the day, and actually that was its night roost. So this picture was taken pretty late in the day. I think it was at 1/20th of a second. But what was nice, I guess, maybe because it was sleepy, let me get pretty close. So, you do see the natives, the native birds and the migratory birds side by side. That is a gray crest, gray, I forgot, gray crested or gray headed yellowthroat. So this is related to our common yellowthroat. I only saw this one once. They're very skulking, much easier to hear than to photograph and to see. Again, I would hear them often, but rarely ever see them. And this one came out when I was making pitching sounds. That's the Forktail Flycatcher, out hunting insects in the fields. That's a black-headed trogon. This was in Guatemala, and there's two. Of course, there's Tikal, which most people know about, but there's another site called Chachalaka, which is I don't know, maybe 20 miles away. Hardly any people, and a lot more birds at that other site. It's a little bit difficult to access. You kind of need a 4x4 to get to it. But I'd like to go back there sometime. I was actually hoping, if all this hadn't happened this year with COVID, I was hoping to go back this year, but I think I'll have to wait until next year. That's a tropical screech owl. Relatively common. And again, much easier to hear than to see. And this is at the lagoon where the pinnated bittern was. So it was pretty close to the water. That is the, why do you have to put such long names on these birds? That's the, oh my God, I can't remember. The name just escaped me. It's a magpie jay. Feel free to put in the name. It just escaped my mind. I haven't had to think of the name in a long time. But this one, you find it at low elevations, but also they start moving into the mid elevations. And they tend to be skittish. It took me a while to take a decent picture, but you know, it's another good excuse to go back and take more. These are red-legged honey creepers. And they love this fruit. And I was really, really surprised when I found them very close to the capital in that same park. That is the one I was telling you, that was a coffee plantation that was donated. Further up on that park at high elevation, there's another coffee plantation also. I don't know if it was from the same owners, that was also donated. And that's where you really see the transition of the birds from lowlands and the ones from the higher lands. Unfortunately, I wish I could have spent more time at this location because there were several other species that were coming to feed on this fruit. When by the time I went back, all the fruit had opened and all of it was empty. That is a white-bellied Chachalaka. It's an endemic of the isthmus of the Pacific, on the Pacific slope. Not so common. I have a feeling that they're probably more skittish than there would be in other places, because they used to be hunted. I think now they're mostly left alone, but they're not very approachable. That's a ruddy quail dove. And that's another bird that, it can be very skulking. But there's a couple of occasions when they actually walked right by my feet and I couldn't photograph them because they were just too close. I couldn't focus. But most of the time, the moment you look at them, they're just on the edge of the forest. They walk right in, and it's always very dark, low light, and they just have a way of moving that for some reason the focusing system just can't get a hold of them. But we found this one on the nest, which is a little bit unusual. I think there's only very, very few pictures of this one bird sitting on the nest. This is the Melodious Blackbird. And in urban areas, you find it in forest, urban areas, and it has a very distinctive song of kind of bouncing whistles, and they move their tail back and forth like a clock when they sing. Very distinctive. I don't think he wanted me to take his picture. Bowtail grackle. I'm sorry, gray-tailed grackle. And those are everywhere. Moving a little higher into the forests, you find the long-tailed mannequin. I think this is the northernmost mannequin. As you go south, they're replaced by the lance-tailed mannequins and other species of mannequins, but you do find the red-headed mannequin and one other species, but I think this is the one that you can find the most northern one of the family. And this was in Guatemala. I think this was in a finca, in a farm by Lake Atitlan. And as you can see, this is in a pine forest. It's a pine oak forest. It's a little bit drier area. And these are the bush tits. This is what they look like down there. As far as I know, this is still the same species of bush tits as we have here. But these ones have a very marked mask. I think in Arizona, you do find some that have that mask. But not as pronounced as the ones in Central America. This is an endemic parrot, Pacific parakeet. Nothing really special about it, but kind of cool. This is a Rufus and white wren. That's another one of those birds that you hear more than you see. And whenever we would walk by this one spot, it would set it off, and it wouldn't come out. You pitch and it wouldn't come out. Try the call, it wouldn't come out. But whenever we were walking away, it would come. It would come out to see that we were leaving. And so when I finally got him, it's like I asked my friends to just keep walking, and sure enough, it came out and was able to snap a few shots. Violet-eared hummingbird, and actually the name changed. There was a taxonomic revision in 2016. So now this is called the Mexican violet ear. So I think from Mexico to Costa Rica is the Mexican violet ear, and from the Costa Rican highlands, down to Ecuador is the lesser violet ear. And one of the main differences is that the lesser violet ear does not have that patch of blue on the chest, or purplish blue like this one does. And by the way, this flowering bush, it was in one of those transition areas where you have the remnant cloud forest. Then there's like open fields, and then you have lava fields where you have agave plants. And I mean, it was an excellent area for birds because you had this very quick transition from one to the other. And this plant was growing all over the place, and there were a lot of birds coming to feed on it. I mean. And this is not at the same location, but here's the Mexican violet ear on its nest. And we were walking, and you could hear all the males singing, so they form a lick. And we were just watching them talking, and then we saw this one coming down with some nesting material. And it's, I mean, these are a little bigger than like Anna's hummingbirds, but for a hummingbird, the nest is a pretty good sized nest. And then we came back a couple weeks later, and they were babies. This is another bird that was split in the taxonomic revision. So now this is a lessons Montmartre. The difference, I can't remember what the one further south is now called, but this one is supposed to do 2 whoops as part of its song, as opposed to the other one only does 1. And there's probably more difference than just that. I call it for the longest time the blue crown Montmartre, but now it's lessons Montmartre. And this was actually like, it was just sitting there very close to the hummingbird's nest. So when we were done photographing the hummingbirds, we turned around and took pictures of this guy. This is not such a great picture, but it's a pretty rare bird. It's the blue-throated Montmartre, very endemic to the mountains of El Salvador, Guatemala, and southern Mexico. I only saw them once in the whole time that I was there, this one pair. Tried to follow them, see where they were going, if they had a nest around there. And I don't know if you know this, but one of the things that Montmartres do is for their nests is like they dig into the ground. They dig tunnels like kingfishers do. And it would have been great to have found where these guys were nesting, but this is what I had to, this is the one that I kept. And, again, another good excuse to go back. This is definitely one of my favorite birds of that area. I would have to say there's this one and the Horn Guan, the pink-headed warbler. I mean, the color on this bird, that pink on the head, is just incredible. That venaceous red on the body. It just, especially when you see it on this, they like the pine oak forests. It has a very limited range also. So you only find it in Guatemala and southern Mexico. Yeah, it's really beautiful. I never get tired of seeing it. And sometimes you find other things. That is a and I think it's an endemic snake if I remember correctly. That's a Guatemalan palm pit viper. That's another endemic of the highlands, the blue-tailed hummingbird. And this is the yellow-throated brushfinch. And again, you can see that this is, there's pine cones around. It was actually taking the seeds out of the pine cone. And I just got lucky that this one was not skittish. It just went about doing its thing. Previously, when I had tried to photograph them, the moment you point the camera or you even move or just look at them, they just go hide into the bushes. It even posts on this wild begonia. This is the belted flycatcher. Very difficult to find. I tried twice to find it in Guatemala along with the Horn Guan, couldn't find it. There's no locations. I think unfortunately, when guides use calls too much, they probably scare them away. And then finally, I got to see it in Mexico when we weren't even looking for it. We just happened to be walking, looking for other birds, and this one popped up and posed nicely. This is another endemic thrush. This is the Rufus colored thrush. Again, this is only found in the oak and pine forests in the mountains. And as you go up into cloud forest, it's actually replaced by the black thrush. But there's some overlap, but you definitely never see them in the lowlands. And the crescent-chested warbler, really nice little warbler. I know sometimes, I think there's a couple that have shown up in the US, in Arizona. And it's not migratory, it's a permanent resident. And very close to where that one was a wintering McGillivrays warbler. So it's kind of cool to see one of our Western warblers hanging out in that area. This is at about 3,000 foot elevation. But like they are, same thing like they are here, they're very skulking. It wouldn't come out. But I kept seeing it in the same little bush area over and over until finally one day it came out. It was catching moths. Another one of the tropical warblers, that's the Rufus capped warbler. And this is the kind of habitat that you find them in. It's cloud forest, but not, well, there are some cloud forests that are called cloud forests that are not so humid, and there are some that are super humid. I mean, this one, the clouds, fog kind of coming in and out. You can see that there's epiphytes and moss on the trees. But other places, everything is just covered. You'll see in other pictures, everything's just covered in bromeliads and orchids and moss. Unfortunately, you know, they're beautiful places, but for photography, it's not so great because the light is low. The camera, sometimes the lenses can fog up. Does not make it easy at all. And then the birds are just very skittish, always hiding. You see them for a couple seconds and they disappear. This is another one of those endemics that it's pretty difficult to get. It's a white-faced quail dove. This is one that I've been trying to photograph for a long time. And I mean, they always see you first and they just walk away. But they're all never far from the edge of the forest, so that when they just take a few steps and disappear. This one, I just happened to be sitting down, waiting for another bird, and it just walked up and froze when it saw me. But it was very low light conditions. And as far as I know, this one is you find it from southern Mexico down to northern Honduras in the mountains. But it's rare. And before I show you the next picture, we did find a nest of this dove. As far as I know, is the only photograph of this bird on a nest that there is. So when I was just searching the web just to make sure, you know, there weren't other photographs of this bird on the nest, I found my picture in another website. It was a British website, but at least they gave me the credit for it, so they didn't claim it to be theirs. But you know, here it is. That's not the same bird, of course. That's on the other photo, but well hidden in the bushes. Maybe only about 4 or 5 feet high. And there was a little chick. It already had one little chick on the nest. But that's another one where I couldn't go back and follow up on it or bring different equipment to try to set up pictures, because it was quite a hike to get there. And we just happened to, we were looking for something else and we just happened to come across this. And that well camouflaged bird is a whistling quail. That's another one of the endemics of the area. You find them alongside with the white-faced, the white-faced dove. Again, it's another one that I had seen that always ran away, and this one just stayed, I guess, confident that with his camouflage I was not going to be able to see it. I had to use flash. It was under some tree roots, and that's where they live. They just they're always under bushes. They're never out in the open. But you know, it's a cool bird to find. And then you come out to the edge of the forest, and I think this is a Tennessee warbler. So another migrant. You can tell by its face that it's been feeding on nectar or pollen, because the face is just covered in pollen. They're usually, I don't think they're usually that yellow, because even on the chest you can see pollen that is picked up from flowers. And so we're back at that patch of flowers I told you about. And here is this flower piercer, cinnamon-bellied flower piercer. If you notice, it has a big hook on the tip of the beak, and it uses that to break the flower, to make a little hole at the base of the flowers. And the scientific name of this bird is diglossa, D for two, glossa for tongue. It has a forked tongue, and it helps it get the nectar out of the flowers, out of the base of the flowers. And the hummingbirds hate them, you know, because they cheat basically. You know, they're cheating the flower. They're not pollinating. They're just taking the nectar. But interestingly, I also observed that when they have made a hole and the hummingbirds scare them away, the hummingbirds will use that hole to get to the nectar. So. And here it is when it came out to the open. This one is another one I had looked for a long time. It's called a sparkling-tailed hummingbird. And it's very tiny. It's definitely a highland specialist. Very fast. It behaves more like an insect than a hummingbird. And I remember either reading or somebody telling me that, or watching it in a program, that some of the very small hummingbirds, their wing beat sounds like a large bee or a bumblebee. And hummingbirds usually don't mess with those because they don't want to get stung by one of those. I guess it could kill them. And so normally they're able to feed around the larger hummingbirds without being disturbed. But unfortunately for this guy, the Mexican violet ears just kept scaring it away, and I just wanted to like swap them away because I was so excited to finally see it and be able to photograph it. So it hung around for a couple minutes and then just disappeared. But it was nice to finally see it and be able to take a few shots. So here it is again. Again, because it's smaller than the other ones and it just moves faster. It was difficult to photograph. This is a green-throated mountain gem. It's another endemic of the highlands of Central America. Of course, when I say Central America, you know, southern Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. Yeah, there were quite a few of them there. There were quite a few birds coming to those flowers. And at night, when we went out, we found this whiskered screech owl. This is a Rufus brown wren, also an endemic. You can see it's that sand is actually volcanic sand. And it would move from the forest and come out to the sand. It was, I think, catching ants or something like that. And like a lot of birds, you know, some of them are, you can't even look at them and they fly away, and there'll be one that couldn't care less. Like they almost come and perch on your finger. So this one was one of the ones that couldn't care less. But still, it was difficult because the light is so low. This one is called Plain Wren. And that's one of the ones, yes, and it is very plain. A little bigger than our house wren. And it's another one that was split recently into 3 species. So now they are called Cabanis wren. And this is in that now, you know, again, this area was maybe not even an eighth of a mile, because you had the rainforest and you had the flowers and you had all the bushes, and then you get to the open lava fields and you have the agaves growing, and they happen to be flowering, and it was attracting a lot of different other birds. And this one is a bushy crested jay. That's another highland endemic. And this one I was super excited when I finally saw it because this is a bar-winged oriole. Again, an endemic, very limited range, very difficult to see. I had only gotten glimpses of it before, just flying from one tree to the other. But the sweet nectar of the agave brought them down. And he was definitely enjoying himself, probably got drunk from having all that sugar. And look who's there. Townsend's Warbler. I was like, well, what are you doing here? I guess this was in El Salvador, in Cerro Verde. It's one of the extinct volcano parks that has a cloud forest on it. And when I looked at the maps, I think that's probably the southernmost range where they migrate. But it's kind of interesting that we get so many of them who stay here and others that just fly so far south. And this is moving into what I was telling you. This is the cloud forest where most of the time it's foggy, it's raining, it's colder, much more lush, really, really beautiful. But again, very difficult to photograph because there's not a lot of open spaces, there's not a lot of light, and most of the birds tend to be higher up in the canopy. And you find cool things like these mushrooms. I've never seen mushrooms like this before. I wonder if they glow at night. I wanted to come back and see them, but unfortunately that was the last day, so I couldn't check if they were glow in the dark mushrooms. And, you find orchids and some of the specialty cloud forest birds, like this amethyst-throated hummingbird. This is another one that I like to go back and get a better picture of because they have so many colors. Their wings are colorful, their throat is colorful, but to get all the colors, to be able to capture all the colors, it's probably a little difficult. And they're just going to wildflowers. Actually, when I took this picture, the fog had just lifted for a few minutes and it came back. But that's how it is up there. You get to see them for a little bit and then they go back into their habitat. That's a black-crested coquette. That was in Chiapas, in Mexico, El Triunfo. That's the first one and last one I've ever seen. I think that's an immature male, but that one does have a bigger range. I think you can find it throughout Central America, and it's not necessarily only in the highlands. You can find it in lower elevations as well. And emerald toucanet. I know there's been some splits with the emerald toucanets. I've seen them in Tikal and in the coastal areas, and they're definitely different to the ones you find in the cloud forest. So if they haven't been split already into different species, they probably will. And this one, I mean, I wanted to show it to you anyways. It's kind of a plain looking gray bird. It's called the slate colored solitaire. But if you have a chance to look it up and listen to the song, it's really amazing. It's like this descending metallic flute. It just, first of all, it's so loud that it doesn't seem like it would come out of a little bird like this. And it has that metallic resonance to it like nothing else I've heard before. This is definitely a cloud forest bird. A little bit further down in the mountains, in like the oak pine forest, it's replaced by the brownback solitaire, which also has, you know, kind of plain looking, but also has a really, really beautiful song. And another one of our, well, although this is not a Western migrant, but an Eastern migrant, black-throated green warbler. That's the blue-capped euphonia. I chased it around for a couple days. This is the best picture I could take of it. It's not that they were so skittish, but you know the fruit was up high. They were just going about feeding, and once in a while when they would come a little lower, the fog would roll in. It was just impossible. But it's I'm sure there's some better pictures of it around, but it's a really beautiful little bird and also an endemic. And of course, the quetzals. This was interesting because I had seen quetzals before, but always from a distance. And on this occasion, the only avocado trees, that's, you know, one of their main foods, the only avocado trees, wild avocado trees that had fruit were the ones in the parking lot of the park. So the quetzals were coming down to feed in the parking lot, and they were flying back and forth. The emerald toucanets were coming in and chasing the quetzals away. I mean, it was pretty amazing experience. This was in Guatemala, and interestingly, some police came by, and when they saw it, they said, you know, of course they're from there, and then they said that they didn't think they actually existed. That you know, they even though it's in their money, and I think it's also in their flag, they just thought that it was something that was made up, that they didn't really exist. But you know, I mean, when you see it, it's such an amazing bird. And then finally, after 2 horrible death hikes, I got to see the Horn Guan. Very, very limited range, really odd looking bird, but beautiful at the same time. You can only find it in the cloud forests. I mean, hopefully they're not going to be, well, I'm sure they will be impacted by climate change, but hopefully they'll be able to adapt, or there will be enough cloud forests left for them to continue living. And that's it.